Wow, super excited to be here. I'm going to take a minute really quickly. At Culture Amp, we're big into values, and one is courage to be vulnerable. Courage to be vulnerable? I haven't been on stage in 2 years. We haven't been together. I do conferences too. I've built conferences. This is so exciting. I'm super excited. I put this talk together specifically for this. So we're doing it together. I'm excited. I'm going to set this up. We're going to do something interactive, right? I'm going to get you moving. It's after lunch. And then hopefully we're going to have some time at the end I'll present some information, and then we'll do some questions. I also want to say before I get started, just because of what you all do, super appreciative. I love California. Matter of fact, I just learned this morning, I grew up in your competition. I grew up in Orlando, Florida. I first came out to California in 1996. I was in the U.S., I was in the Air Force, and I was stationed, it was very difficult. I was stationed in Monterey at the Defense Language Institute, and it was an amazing introduction into California. I was in love right away. I went back to Florida to finish school. I moved back in 2003. I've been here ever since. I love this state. I love getting to know it. I've been here 17 years. And your work and what you do, and just big fan, love it. So it's good to be here. Okay, a little setup for this talk, how this came to be, because I think it's important. The organizers of this conference reached out to me. They had heard through some other people about me that I had worked at LinkedIn, that I work at this company called Culture Amp, that they wanted to bring this idea of culture and our workplace development to the forefront of this conference. And they got on the phone and said, Craig, can you help us find somebody? And I said, okay, I think I might be able to help you find somebody. So I asked them questions. What are you looking to do? What are you looking to talk about? And at the end, I thought to myself, I have to say this. I'll help you find somebody, but I think I'm your person. I mean, this is what I do. It's what I love. My background's organizational psychology. I am passionate about helping, improve the workplace for humans in general. I work for a company called Culture Amp. We build tools to help organizations listen to their employees, not only listen, but how to take action and turn that into, effective cultures, built and designed to do what they're supposed to do. So I said yes. I said, let's do this. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, okay, I usually talk to HR people. I usually talk to learning and development. There's a lot of marketers in this room. I was like, well, okay, I think I have ideas, but let me reach out to some of the people here. So I asked the organizers, can I get the names of a couple of people? Can you get me in touch? And I had 3 conversations. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. And it was super informative. It was really interesting. I met with 2 people from the DMOs. I met with somebody else from a retail organization. But I was also thrown for a little bit of a loop, right? I got on the first call, and I said, this is what I do. And one of the first things I heard was, Craig, it's not about culture. People can't live by us. We can't find workers. They can't afford housing. And I'll be honest. Can I cuss? Is it okay? Can I say? I had no shit moment. I was like, oh gosh, what am I going to do? I knew what I was going to do. But the point was, I had to really think for a moment, right? Because I'm not an economist. I don't talk about work. I don't talk about housing. I don't talk about these issues. I talk about organizations and people. And then it came to me. This isn't a new term. Matter of fact, Peter Drucker was kind of the father of modern organizational psychology. He died in 2002, so it was during the Industrial Revolution. And his whole point, and at the time was pretty progressive, was that people are your competitive advantage. And what I like about this was that these 2 sides, culture and strategy. And where I'm going is, I believe there's 2 sides to organizations, to our businesses, to what you're building. One strategy, how you deploy your resources to achieve what you're looking to do, your manpower. What are they focused on? That's not really culture. I mean, that needs to be done. The other side to me is culture. How are you going about that? And that's what's really interesting. And I think what this saying brings together is this idea, culture eats strategy for breakfast. If you have an off strategy with a a team that understands what we're trying to do, they work well together, you're going to have a much better chance of succeeding. If you have a great strategy with a team that doesn't communicate, that's combative with one another, that's not engaged, you're going to have a lot less opportunity to succeed. So what I wanted to talk today about was really is that I can't speak to one side of this. That's the work you'll be doing, the work with other people to think about your strategy. How do we deal with these housing situations? But I do believe that culture is the advantage. That culture, the way you build your organizations, and for the marketers out there, you're part of organizations, your employees, your employers. And I think there's a lot that you'll take from this also, because it's about listening. Listening not only to employees, but also listening to your audience, to who you're serving. The other thing I want to bring up that came to mind for me was this saying. When I was at LinkedIn, I got introduced to a man named Fred Kaufman. One of his books is The Meaning Revolution. I think it's his better book. He was kind of one of the gurus around the organizational culture at LinkedIn when I was there, and I was so impressed with a 5,000-person organization and how they operated. I was really inspired. I started reading more, and he uses this term, but I love, he says, responsibility, your ability to respond. And I think a lot about that, and I think that's what the situation we're in. I heard a lot of things. I heard that these are really tough times for you. I heard that you're an industry that's challenged. I see across a lot of different industries, a lot of industries are challenged right now. These are tough times. What you do have is your responsibility, your ability to respond to a situation. Okay, so here's what I said. I'm a facilitator too. So I'm not just going to talk at you. We're going to do a little something. We're going to take a moment. I'm going to invite you. Okay, so here's the deal. This might seem a little, whatever, we're in California. We can do a little breathing. We're going to go in for a second, but believe me, it's after lunch. It's also going to have you come out. We're going to have some energy. Here's what I want you to do. And this is good, by the way. If you lead teams, I know it's sometimes a little like, breathing. Just to quickly just take a moment of pause in a team meeting or whatever. So I'm going to invite you to just get comfortable, all right? And you all have pens and papers around you. So I want everybody to just get a piece of paper and a pen. I'd prefer you use the ones on your desk because I want everybody to use the same exact one, hopefully the same pen. So what we're going to end up with is something a little more anonymous. So everybody just get comfortable. This is a good one. It's an easy one. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. We're going to do it 2 times. 4 in through your nose, 4 out through your mouth. Seriously, this is just about pausing. I'm not asking you to do any meditation, anything. And I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to reflect on it. All right? So just ground yourself. 1, in through your nose. 2, 3, 4. Out through your mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4. In. 1, 2, 3, 4. Out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the first question. What inspires you about this industry? Why this industry? You're talented. You could do marketing for lots of different things. You could work in maybe you're in hotels, maybe you're in restaurants. Why this one? Don't make it long. Just kind of summarize on that piece of paper what inspires you about this industry. We're going to do one more question. We're going to do one more breath. Ready? I could use one too. Ready? In through your nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Out through your mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to ask you to get a little more vulnerable in this next one. And here's the deal. No one's going to see what you wrote. It's going to stay, well, somebody will see, but it's going to say 100% anonymous, I promise you. So as much as you're willing, what has been your biggest professional challenge in these past 2 years? If you're being honest, and again, you will never be associated with what you write here. So you have an opportunity to be honest, anxiety, stress, fear. Okay. So now we're going to have some fun, and we're going to wake up. So if you're able, you don't have to. I want you to take that paper. I want you to wad it up. And this is something we call making it snow. So I want you to stand up. For 1 minute, here's what's going to happen. I said, keep it on your water glasses. You're going to throw the paper around. But here's the deal. Catch one, throw it again. Catch it, throw it again. We're going to go for 30 or 45 seconds. We are going to throw these. We are jumbling these papers all over the room. Go. Let's make it snow in here. There we go. I like it. I love it. It's so much fun. I know it's hard to stop. Wait, now you're pelting people. You shouldn't be pelting people. This is a snowball fight. All right, we're going to bring it back. So grab a piece of paper. I want you to sit down. This will tie into something bigger. I want you to take the one that you got, and I want you to take a minute. Let's bring the music down now. I want you to take a minute, and I want you to read the one you have. What inspires you? And what's been really challenging in the last 2 years? You know, it's funny that one landed here, because I was going to ask people to throw it up, so I'm going to do that. I was going to read a couple. And if anybody has if there's one or two you want to throw it my way, and then we're going to keep moving forward. But we have one here. I don't know. What inspires you? Building experiences. What's been challenging? Challenging growth. Anybody else have one that they think I should see? We should read to the room? What inspires you? Connection, education, inspiration, motherhood in the pandemic. It's been hard. It's been hard, particularly on women. A lot of research. If you dig into that research, it's pretty shocking. There were discrepancies before, but the toll this has taken on women and moms. I have a wife and a mother, 2 children. It's been tricky. One more? One more you think I should read? Ooh, okay. These give me the last two. One, it's the ability to create positive change in the world. Two, consulting hotels and DMOs to partner to advance sustainability, yeah. And then last, we'll do this one. Let's see here. Connecting people from different cultures. Travel is the best. Love it. Arm of diplomacy. Stress. Working from home. I did this for a couple reasons. One is I wanted to connect all of you. Two, if you have the courage and you have a team, seriously, to do a breath and just do a one-word check-in at your meetings, I promise you over time it will change. It's amazing if we can get people to be honest with each other. I also wanted you to hear from each other. This is hard. We've been through this together. We've gone through it in our own ways. You've gone through it collectively. Okay, so now let's get into the talk a little bit and what I want to hit on. First thing, culture. This word gets thrown around a ton, and it's always strange to me to get into a talk to not take a moment to define this. Here's my definition of culture. It's worked for me for a long time. I love the simple one, the way we do things around here. Period. End of story. Culture is the way we do things around here. However, what's interesting about that is that there is culture at this conference. There's culture at your workplace. There's culture at the grocery store. I was in the military. There's culture in the military. There's culture in prison. Culture's everywhere. So we throw this word around, and I think we're not giving it the true justice what we're talking about oftentimes at organizations, right, in our workplaces. So I like to go a step deeper, and I love this quote from our CEO, Didier. We're an Australian company, by the way. We do work with 5,000 companies globally. We have 750 employees. It's been an amazing journey to watch our tools and technology roll out and how they get adopted. What Didier says is brand is a promise to your customer, and culture is how you deliver on that promise. And right, I read this earlier, and I thought to myself, even marketers, brand, we know about this. Brand is that promise to the world. That's a promise to your employees. What are you trying to bring to the world? But culture is how you deliver on that. How are we going to go about that? Which I think is so important. And I think it's important because at the grocery store, in your family, no matter how you behave, they're not going away. If we don't succeed at what we do, we go away. Something new comes. So it is unique and it's different. And I think it's really important to differentiate between culture and organizational culture and what we're trying to do. We're trying to achieve something in the world. If we don't succeed, people move on, they go different places. So underneath that is building solid culture. And it's come up a lot today. You know, it's amazing. I was wondering, like, how's this going to land? But I kept hearing these talks. And we can bring the lights back down a little bit. I like the moody light. It's cool. So listening. I like this proverb. No one is as deaf as the person that will not listen. Listening is the key. Effective listening. Listening to the people you're serving. Listening inside your organizations. I mean, if there's been one thing today is adapting. We need to adapt. We need to adapt quickly, especially with what you're facing. You have challenges you're facing that you haven't faced before. And again, I don't have the answers. I can't solve the housing situation. But I know that your best key to success is how do you listen to the people that are working, the people that their needs are. How do we solve this? Because skiing will still be there. Tourism is going to still be there in 10 years, I believe. But how do we adapt as an organization? How do you adapt? How do you stay successful and continue? And that's listening. So I want to break this down because we could say listening and it would just be like, oh, active listening, or I want to hear you. We're talking about organizational listening, and I think this is where we get important. And I also think for the marketers, this is kind of more the strategy and how we see it, right? We're building tools for organizations to effectively listen and take action. So first is collect, right? How do we collect information? This is the survey piece of it, or it's a couple of questions, whatever it may be. I think oftentimes people get hung up on this and they think this is listening. This is collecting. This is, do you have good questions? Are you making sure those questions are getting out to people? Have you vetted those questions? Are you, how are you going to think about those questions? So really building an important survey, whatever your process or approach to understanding. Some of you work for small organizations. You don't need a tool like ours to run a survey. Our survey is great when you have 100 people, 200 people, 1,000 people, and you need to aggregate that information. If you have 10 or 15, you don't need that, but you do need good questions. The second piece is understand. So collect, understand. Okay, so you ran the survey. So what? What do you do with that information? Are you thoughtful? And I think this is where a lot of organizations have a pitfall because they're not properly understanding. I'll give you an example. We always see the question around compensation scores low, right? It's like about 50 to 52% across the board in every survey, millions and millions of surveys. If you saw that and said, well, they scored low on that, we need to go focus on that, you might be off. Because almost always when we look at our questions against engagement, what drives engagement, compensation is always a very low driver of engagement. So the point is there might be a question that you scored higher on, but how does it impact the outcome? I heard that earlier today, someone was talking about outcomes, right? Outcomes are important, and what are the drivers? And do you understand? So in our case, if you're working across a large group, that's a piece of what I'm talking about, understanding. But whatever tool you're using, however you're going about it, are you stopping and saying, we've collected, but are we taking the time to properly understand the information? When you run a survey, if you're going out to market, or if you have a lot of employees, that's a lot of data. So thinking about how do we understand? And finally, action, right? How do we take action? How many people here take an employee engagement survey? Ready to show of hands, right? In their life. How many people have taken an employee engagement survey and never heard anything afterwards? How'd that make you feel? And I think it's such an important question because it happens all the time, particularly internally. I don't know if that's quite the same if you go to, if you're marketing and asking people, because they'll just vote with their dollars. They'll move on, right? But your people internally. And oftentimes what we see is companies collect information and you never hear anything again. And it almost has the opposite effect towards engagement, right? So it's collect, it's understand, and it's act. I'm going to tell you a little something. Everybody loves this when I share it, so I'm going to share it. I'm going to slide it in. If you want to drive change, whatever you're doing, act as easy as 1, 2, 3. Pick one thing, come up with 2 things you want to change about that thing, and communicate 3 times. The beginning, the middle, and the end. I share this with leaders all the time. There's a couple layers. One is I said pick one thing. And I'll talk more about this later. People spend a lot of time picking too many things. The point of just doing something has such an effect. I think about, anybody watch Ted Lasso? Right, some Ted Lasso people here. I'm not going to ruin it, I promise. But there's a scene in the beginning. He shows up. He's completely out of his league. He's a football coach from a Tier 2 school in America going to a premier soccer league. And one of the first, they're bashing on him. He's out of his league. And one of the first things he does is he puts a little box down. He says he takes suggestions. And they all throw their things in there. And there was a scene earlier where the shower heads broken. They don't say much about it. It's subtle. People put their stuff in there. And there's another scene later where the guy goes and takes a shower and it's fixed. And he looks around and he's like, but it hits that point. They heard me. Trust started to get built. They listened. They took action. So it's better to pick a thing or 2 and do something about it than try to do everything. We're going to get to that. But so action. And then there's arrows all the way around. Collect, understand, act, repeat. It's never over. And especially, we're talking about Gen Z. We're talking about these generations. We're talking about the changing workplace. If you do this once and stop, it might help a little bit. It's the process that's so important. It's the continuation of listening and being engaged with your employees, with your customers. Repeat, repeat, repeat. And you get into that habit. If you do this all the way through and people see you taking action and they see that their voice mattered, things change. And it's important, and especially if you're trying to be the companies that are going to survive through this, and how do you stay nimble and move? Okay, so I'm going to get into some tips. I like this one a lot. This is a McKinsey & Company research I found. It hits on something, there's a couple things this hits on, that I think it really summarizes what I see often, and I think it drives home a point. What they did was they asked a large group of people who had left, employees who had left organizations, and said, here are a whole bunch of reasons why people leave organizations. Rank the relevance or importance of why you left the organization. And what they said was valued by managers, sense of belonging, having caring and trusting teammates. And then they said the same thing to the employers and said, rank why you think people are leaving. And what they heard was ability to work remotely, poached by another company, development opportunities. So one is, and this lines up with some data I'm going to show you later, is just the data itself. What it says is employees are relational. They're thinking about relationships, they're thinking about how they belong, they're thinking about their voice. And employers are also transactional. And I'm not even passing judgment. I think the most important thing here is to say, if you're an employer or if you're looking at this large scale, you probably have a slant or a bias towards operation. And you don't always see the same way. And I said earlier, what I see in our data that it wasn't as easy to put up, I love this, is we do heat maps. So we can slice and dice different ways. And one of them is often by what level, right? So all the way from an entry-level employee to executives. I see it all the time where you see a question like, we communicate openly and honestly. And the leaders just think they're doing a great job. And the junior employer's like, no. And there's like a 20 or 30 point spread. So I call it out. I love this because it, number one, makes that point that you kind of don't know, and it's not bad, especially if you're listening to a large group of people. We often come from different perspectives, and it's only if we listen and take ourselves out of the equation so we can make those decisions is so important. And I think it also calls out really what people are looking for today. I mean, it's relationships that I matter. All right, so I want to go into a couple more tips around listening. That was one of them. Another one is diagnose versus solve. I think, again, marketer, or if you're doing this internally or they're thinking about employees, the approach shouldn't be to solve. There's not a survey that's going to solve your problems. I've learned this along the way, and when I'm coaching organizations, is really approach your survey as a diagnostic tool. Pretend you're a doctor, and you're trying to eliminate things to understand where the areas to focus so you can be effective in that strategy piece. Where am I putting my resources? How am I spending my time and energy? Right? Not the action piece or how we're going to do it, but you're aligning the right things. Because again, if you have a great culture, but you are putting your resources in the wrong place, you could be in trouble. So really approach it from a diagnostic perspective. I want to understand better, which leads to the next one, which is stay curious. So as you start to uncover things, they can be triggering, especially if it's your organization or you've been involved for many years running it. You're going to get some of this feedback. Oftentimes it can trigger us. It can be taken the wrong way. And I don't know how you're collecting it, but if it's open-ended, it can get nasty sometimes, So staying curious. Why is that sentiment coming out? I'm seeing this thing come up more. Can I go talk to a group of people? The better you can stay really curious and kind of keep yourself out of it and see it strategically from that perspective, the better you're going to understand what's going on. And again, these are tips around listening, and if you're building that. Consistency in questions. Just a couple things here. One is, I've really grown an appreciation for a well-written question and how subtle that is. There's so many times I see companies come back like, we want to ask this, and my manager makes it comfortable and easy for me to do my job. Well, if you answer that question, you're really going to try to understand that. Was it comfortable? Was it easy? You made it hard for yourself, right? So we call that double barrel when you're asking multiple questions instead of a single question. Consistency, one, is getting a really tight question. But number two, it can't just be going to ask a couple people that you trust at your organization and saying, well, I talked to Mary, and this is what I heard. It's consistency. It's asking the same question to a large group of people, taking yourself out of the equation and asking the same question. Therefore, you get, it's called validity in our world, that you're getting the same response and you have something to act on. Again, when I went to school, we talked a lot about in computer science, one of my undergrad degree, garbage in, garbage out. If you get the wrong data in, then you're going to make bad decisions. So that's that consistency in questions. Think about your questions you're asking, take the time up front, and then finally, test before delivery. I'm telling you, it sounds so easy, and so many people don't. Run it by a colleague or two. Run it by people that you think are going to be a little apprehensive. Get their feedback. They're going to tell you things about your questions that you can tweak those questions before you roll them out, especially if you're going large scale. Right? So I think these are 4 more tips. Check your bias, the thing that what you think check. We call it validating your bias, or you can use data to say, I have this story, is it true or not? So either confirm it, or myth busting is the other word we use, or bust the myth. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about our data, about what we know. Here's what I pulled on. We had a benchmark around retail. We had, I think it was over 17 million questions answered in the last 12 months. We worked with over 300 companies that we pulled this from. And I told you before about the engagement and the drivers of engagement, right? So let's frame this a little bit because it's important. The way we see engagement, this is pretty standard across the board, stay, say, and thrive. If an employee would say good things about you, would recommend you to their friends, if they see themselves there in 2 years and are not currently looking for another job and are willing to go above and beyond, thrive, you've got a pretty engaged employee. That's the sweet spot. So that's what we call the outcome. Every survey, engagement survey, we're going to ask those questions and we're going to see what's the engagement level. And then we're going to look at all the other questions that they answer in that industry, at your company, however we're doing this, and say, how did those questions relate to overall engagement? So I like this because I think it's pretty indicative of what you're thinking about, and I wanted to go through the top 5. The biggest driver of engagement is even when something bad happens, I don't question whether or not I belong. I don't know that was there 2 or 3 years ago. Not at that level. Belonging. People want to belong. They want to be part. They want it now more than ever. The old hierarchies, and I think that's what we heard before with the Gen Z, are switching, right? This is the biggest driver of engagement among retail in every survey we've done. They want to feel like they belong. They're part. Number 2, perspectives of mine, like mine, are included in decision-making at the company? This is a decision-making question. I think what I see is agency. Do I have a say? Even if I'm a waiter, even if I'm a dishwasher, I probably have some say about how we could do it better, how I can do it better. Can they be heard? Do they have some say? Do they have some agency? I think as humans, there's a lot of research that says agency is such a big driver, right? So agency, they want agency. Third, I understand how my work contributes to the company's mission. Again, another one we're seeing more and more. Why does it matter? How does this contribute to what we're doing? And I think so many organizations that they do some soul searching can really hone in on that. I love thinking about Zappos. I don't know if anybody does a book called Delivering Happiness that Tony Hsieh, who recently passed away, wrote about Zappos and the journey. And there was this aha moment when he realized we're not selling shoes. We're selling an experience. I just love that pivot. And at that point, everything shifted. And they got acquired by Amazon because Amazon wanted to deliver that experience, right? So people want to know, if you're serving food, if it's a hotel, is there something deeper there? Are we delivering experiences? We saw experiences. Are we delivering people, a satisfying meal where they can connect with friends? And then how are you translating that to your team so they feel part of that? Like, this is what we're doing here. Aside from serving food, we're doing this thing. And again, that's your work to figure out. But people do want purpose. They want a connection. And the more you can build organizations and the work that you're doing in your towns around this sort of idea of what we're bringing to life and how do we connect the people that are supporting that. The leaders at my company demonstrate that people are important to the company's success. What I see here is I'm important. I matter. I'm not just a body. I'll be honest, in the stuff that I've seen, I came up working in hospitality. I think there's a reckoning happening a little bit. I heard a podcast in the New York Times the other day. They were talking, it was all about the Great Resignation. And they were asking people, they're going back to people that left their jobs and said, well, they're trying to understand this better. And one of them was a chef. He said, I've been in this industry for 12 years. I love it. I went to culinary school. I've worked at some of the best restaurants. He goes, I was working like 75 hours a week. I was probably making $12 an hour. My back hurt. I was burnt all the time. My social life was a mess. He goes, I didn't realize it until the restaurant shut down. I got a little extra money. I could sit for a minute. He was like, I never knew how much I hurt, I didn't think about those hours. I was just on this path. He's now delivering mail, and he's so happy. He's got set hours. He has benefits. He gets paid overtime. And I just think that was really interesting. And as somebody that came up in that industry, talked to people in the industry, it can be a rough industry, right? And that if the signal you're sending is you don't matter, you're just another body, I think it's just going to get tougher and tougher and tougher. How do people matter? How do we make people matter? And again, this is what we're seeing, and this is what's coming up in our research. And then 5, this company is a great place for me to make a contribution to my development. Again, you see a lot of this, growth, development. I've had some conversations recently, also when I'm thinking through this talk, and I think it's interesting because my sense is some people will see that and think, yeah, well, this isn't a tech company. We're not developing you to be the next, VP of marketing. I think we need to break this, I call it scarcity, the scarcity mindset of like, oh, they're here and they're mine. The development might be, I know my workforce, many of them are trying to go to school. Many of them are paying for, their children. This goes back to that listening piece, understanding them and helping, how does this role, this job, even if it's for the next year or two, contribute to help that person on their journey? And I think we need to open up and realize people are going to be coming through and going out. Turnover is normal, it's everywhere, but it's particularly normal in your industry. That thinking about somebody's development is not just the development there, but as a human, can you support them and where they are? These 5 things. Now, I know that you're going through a lot right now, but by thinking more about this, focusing, influencing the people that you know to be thinking more about this, I believe is the best chance to be successful, to ride this wave, this storm that we're in, to get through the other side and be the one standing there with employees successfully. Pitfalls. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls. Inconsistency in questions. I think this is redundant. I said earlier consistency. A pitfall is asking questions and getting different answers and thinking you're getting the same answer and then working off data that's not really valid. I like this one. This is big, and I think it's particularly big if you're listening to your people. Questions send signals. What signal are you sending? If you ask a person that doesn't have a lot of flexibility about they're an hourly employee, about being able to work from home, You're sending, so that's looking at your questions and making sure they land. Questions send signals. What signals are you sending with those questions? And if you get a bad response, can you do anything about it? Because again, we talked about before, them telling you there's a problem and you hearing that from a lot of people and doing nothing, we'd say don't run a survey at all. You're going to undermine trust and you're going to undermine with your organization. So the questions send signals. Can you take action? I'll also say this. I think if there's leaders in this room, there's a lot of passive data. And what I mean by that is I can go to my HRIS and learn something about my company. If I do sales, I can go to Salesforce. If I can go to my applicant tracking system. I can go to whatever system and pull data. When you survey, that's active data. You're engaging in a relationship with people. And I think sometimes leaders think it's just another data source. Let me just get some more information. Let me get some more information. And you're pulling that information people are sharing, and they're not seeing anything, nothing's happening, and you're undermining what you're trying to do. Third is fixation on negative results, especially when we do this at scale. It's very easy to get fixated on the negative results. I think we're all wired. You could see 10 positive things and one negative thing, and it really stings. In our case, too, I'll tell people not to look at the written comments until they have a chance to process the aggregated numeric results first. If you're doing this, if you're in some sort of position, think of ways before you get going, how you can take care, how are you going to go through this and be able to stay solid, run it by somebody. It's very easy to get fixated, and you can become off balance and get fixated on that and be taking action when the truth is not really indicative of what's going on, right? So that's really important. And the last one, I've hit on this, is trying to fix it all. So many times, organizations run surveys like this, they start to understand, and they get all spun up, and they try to fix a whole bunch of things, and sometimes they're even doing it, and because they're trying to fix so many things, no one knows. It's hard to communicate that back out. And it's the worst when you realize that a company's doing so much and people don't know, oftentimes because they're trying to do too much, that they're undermining the process while they're trying to do good, right? You do one or two things on the heels of a survey when you listen to your people, the shower head, and do it right and do it well. That subtle message. One of the things I heard in my conversations was trust. Trust has been really tricky with our employees. Do that cycle, collect, understand, act, repeat, and they see you do something because they heard what you did. I promise you trust will start to go up because you're doing something and you're listening. This trying to fix it all is a tricky one because I think as leaders, as business developers, we want to make it right. And sometimes we forget that do a few things really well, circle back, and then try, and then iterate as you go, fix it, move on to the next thing, can be very successful, especially for your organizational culture and how people feel about the workplace. All right, so now I'm excited about this. Connecting the dots. I told you I had 3 conversations before as I was preparing. And I went back and I reflected on the conversations I had. And I wanted to call out those people and talk about some of the things I heard. First, apparently I keep hearing her name come up. So a loved member of your community, Misty Kearns. I had a great conversation with Misty. And she told me a lot of things, but the thing that stood out was she said, we need to do a better job at telling the stories of our industry and the opportunities we have. And I've heard other people talk about that. And this is interesting. I mean, the point I think what Misty was saying was that it's a brilliant community, all this passion, why we do this. And we're not telling those stories very well. We're not communicating. People don't think there's IT jobs in this industry. They think it's all, restaurant and hospitality and working, as housekeeping. And her point was there's so much more happening here, and we need to do a better job of communicating that. How does that tie into what I'm talking about? Misty could be communicating the wrong thing unless she's listening. So telling that story is about listening and being able to reiterate it back. I've talked to a lot of talent professionals and say, well, how do I use tools like yours around engagement to attract talent? And I said, why don't you tell the people you're bringing on, here are our engagement results, here's where we're doing well, here's where we're not doing so well, and here's what we're doing about it. Think about the signal you send to a potential employee. You're not blowing smoke, you're telling them the truth. You say, we run a survey, we listen to you, here's what we've learned, and we're going to share the stuff they're not doing so well either, and we're going to keep working at that. And I would tie that back to Misty and to collectively to all of you is how are we getting that information about our industry, about these jobs, and communicating that back. Another tip, this doesn't come up often, some people do exit interviews. Try doing stay interviews. Go talk to the people that are staying with you that aren't leaving and ask them why they stay. That'll help you tell that story. That'll help you learn, and it's a flip, and it's so interesting that we do that. We interview people that leave, but we don't interview the people that stay. I also want to say that I saw Misty in the lobby yesterday when I came in, surrounded by ex-employees. And they were talking, they were joking, and one said, Misty fired me, which I thought was really funny. But there they were. And I just thought that was, as I'm gearing up for this, there Misty was, hanging out with these employees that got away, that she loved, and they just loved her. And they were so happy to be back and connecting with her. And that just spoke volumes. What are they going to say about Misty? What are they going to say to somebody that says, should I work there? Right? That's important. Second, John Erdy, Executive Director, Mammoth Lakes Tourism. John was the one that got me shaken at first. Craig, it's not culture. We can't hire people. And like, I get it. And it's truth. Like, I can't solve that again, but I can say, build strong businesses, stay iterative, listen. But what John said was the ski bum dream is dead. I love this. He said, I came up, I was a ski bum. I could move to this town, wasn't getting rich, but I got to ski, I got to party, I got to live downtown, I got to go work. And I kept thinking about that. And what I wanted to say to that is, I think he's right at a certain level. There's a new ski bum dream coming. There's going to be another type of ski bum. It's not going away, but we have to solve. What is it? Who is it? How does it work for this next round? You know, he said to me, he goes, a lot of people, you got tech people, they come, they work all day on their computers and they ski. They can live up here, they can make money, they can go ski. I thought, maybe there's a new round of people that can work part-time on their computers and work the operating lift and go ski and have this wonderful life. I don't know, but only by listening and iterating. There's going to be another ski bum. It might not look like the old ski bum. Our world's changing and it's changing fast. But I bet you if we're talking in 10 years, there'll be some new version. And those of you that could more quickly hear that out, accommodate, respond, and build the better operation for that person are going to do better. And then Brian Shuan, Senior Tourism Marketing Director, South Coast Plaza. Brian runs a big retail operation, or is involved in a big retail operation. And that was really interesting to hear him talk. But what he said to me across all those organizations, first I heard a lot about adaptability, iteration. Some of them started taking appointments, high-end, right, these high-end luxury goods, taking appointments. He said fewer people go through the store, but they're selling it like 100% of the people that go through the store buy something. Think about that. I have a funny feeling they're not going to let go of all of that. They're probably, from moving forward, are going to be taking appointments. They moved outside. That you could do drive-through, pick up, talk to them at one point, like iterative. But he said, Craig, the retail operations that have done best, they keep their people. I don't know exactly why. We could run a survey and look at that. But that's what stood out to me. The ones that are winning here through all of this, we have restaurants, we have retail operations. The ones that are winning keep their people. Why? Something's happening there. I bet you if you go in there, you'd find that they're taking care of their people in a different way. They're probably back to that slide of those top 5 things. They're hitting on those. So it's really exciting. I love the fact that I could come back to this and call them out because, and I also want to thank them because I needed to listen. I had an idea of where I wanted to go, and it wasn't until I had those conversations that really helped me direct what I wanted to share with you. We got about 4.5 minutes, and I would love to take a question or two and see where this goes. How would a small company survey employees without them shifting their answers based on lack of anonymity? I got to be honest. I mean, look, I think if you're a small company and you're worried about anonymity, you probably already have a bit of an issue going on. But look, I want people to feel safe. But if you're small, if you're 15 people, number one, you should be communicating well. You should be out and involved. You should be listening to your actions. Then run a Survey Monkey. Nothing wrong with a Survey Monkey. Survey Monkey builds surveys. That's great. Or run a Google survey. You know, our tools go that aggregate and put it into dashboards and help you slice and dice. You just want to get some information. Get 5 questions. Be thoughtful about the 5 questions. Why are you asking those? Questions send signals. Run it. Then bring everybody together and say, here's what we saw. You know, here's what's going on. Does anybody want to share more? Do it in an open session. Maybe do it without anonymity. By the way, I think anonymity is an interesting word too. There's anonymity, which means there is absolutely no connection to the data to the person. And then there is anonymity, I'm on the spot here, and confidentiality. Right? So a company would send us a data file on the back end and say, these are our employees, these are their demographics that we know, and then we run the whole survey. We can back that in and then push back. People in this age are saying this. We can help keep it from being from them honing in on who's saying what. That's not anonymous. That is confidential. Really important differentiation. If you're really worried about anonymity, it's fine. But if I was working with you, I'd also say what's going on. what's happening. There's something you know, probably some real problems that people don't feel safe here. But I do think if you're a smaller organization, you should be able to do this. You don't need all the rigor. You don't need, it's not trying to collect 500 people's information in a snapshot in only 2 weeks and then get back to them in time, not 3 months later. Run the survey. Sit everybody down. Here's what we heard. Let's have a conversation. What's going on? Then how are you creating safe spaces for people to do that? Are you doing things like a check-in? I know, again, it sounds silly and small. You do that consistently, people start to feel seen, right? So that's important. Agile thinking and methodology is more popular in the tech space. Move fast, fail fast, redo. How do we translate better into hiring frontline, low-level hospitality industry? I've been thinking about this for a long time. When agility first came on, my radar screen, agile organizations, it was tech. It's not tech anymore. Look what we're talking about. Look what's happened in the last 2 years. More and more, agile is everything. We spend faster. You are all connected to tech, right? The way we spend, the way we move, the way we think, the way we communicate. I think we're getting to a place that it has infiltrated everything, and this idea that agile is a tech thing is over. I think that things move so quickly. We see it, how fast word can get out if something goes wrong, that you have to adapt and change. So I would push back and say, learn more about agile. I think that thing that I showed you, collect, understand, act, repeat, collect, understand, act, repeat, is agility. Simply doing that and getting into that process and showing people that I'm listening and that we're responding, just do that. You'll change data. I talk about like the Fitbit. Get that data on, keep looking at it. Your behaviors will start to change. So I would say rethink that. Also, I see that, I didn't see it in here, but we've all seen break shit, Scrap that. There is some stuff that carried over from technology that is not healthy, like move fast, break shit. We've gotten ourselves to a lot of problems with that. There's a lot of masculinity in that. There are a lot of young men building technology. My point is we have to be really careful. And there's a lot of research that says bias has been baked into a lot of technology unknowingly, and then it starts to evolve and iterate and evolve and iterate. So I'm always careful with this. I like run experiments. I like design thinking. Right? I'm always thinking about running small experiments and iterate, but trying to get away from the breaking stuff and, because look, I have 2 young daughters. Breaking stuff and moving fast is not helping young women right now with social technology, right? It got more eyeballs on as quickly as possible. We have to be thoughtful. As an employee advocating for cultural change, you know what? I'm going to take it. As an employee advocating for cultural change, what do you do if your own consistency doesn't resonate with decision makers? As an employee advocating for cultural change, what do you do if your own what I see here's a question that comes up often. What if, how I feel is not aligned, if they're not living their values? I think the best you can do is be authentic to yourself, speak your truth. Sometimes you have to move on. I hate to say that, but there are times where I'm talking to people and they're like, I'm beating my head against the wall. The leaders just aren't doing what they say, and this is not the culture I want. And there's a point in time where it's you could take your energy and probably impact a lot of change somewhere, and you just want to change this group of people that aren't changing. So there's a moment where it's okay to say, what I have to bring isn't respected here. I think a lot about values here. I heard somebody use the word the other day, catfishing. In social media, catfishing, I guess, is if somebody acts like they're one thing, and then you meet them and they're somebody else. And they were talking about values at companies and calling it catfishing. You say you're this, and I show up and you're something else. We smell that. We sense that. That was the thing I was going to say before about culture and how quickly, when I talked about at the high level, think about how fast you can move into this room, back home, to the grocery store, onto the ferry, and change how you act innately. We are such sensitive readers of culture. It's beyond almost conscious level, and we do it all the time. When I think about it that way, I think they're watching you. Are you living your values? They see when you're off. And if it's misaligned, it's not safe, and then you get all that bad behavior to become more safe. Okay, I just wanted to say, if you want to stay connected, I'm personally a LinkedIn person. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to push out information. It's an easy way to get connected. Also, I've been very involved in building our community at Culture Amp. Not only do we have these tools, we believe that we need to work together if we're going to change the workplace. And we've created cultureamp.com/community. We have chapters around the world of volunteers and people that are hosting these conversations in local areas. My point is, if this inspires you, if this is something you're interested in, at least take a look and maybe get involved or attend an event. We're trying to build this not just with technology, but we're trying to build this. We need each other. You need each other. You're not getting through this alone. The better you communicate. And that's what we're trying to do around organizational culture. So thank you so much. It was so good to be here with all of you, and I hope that was enlightening. Thank you. All right.